What's up, YouTube and Elyon players? Yes, I know that most of you are mad at me because I won't release my build. Wah. Yes, I am selfish. Yes, I am an asshole. That being the case, there has still been several people that have asked me to release a build that is not necessarily mine. So what I would like to do to help the Elyon community, because I do promote competitiveness and I do still want to see people be good at the game. I just don't want to see people running meta builds. What I'm going to do in this video is provide the basics for each class, and then I'm also going to provide archetypes for Mana Awakening, and corresponding with those Mana Awakening, we're also going to talk about runes. And these archetypes will serve as a basic starting point for players that are getting into the game. And once you learn more about the game, I would encourage you to customize your build and your setup, varying upon your gear and your play style. But my goal is to get you to a point where you have a good starting point so that you can be competitive, right? But like I said, and I tell my guildmates the same thing. I encourage you to customize these builds as you learn more about the game, and also depending upon your RNG and what gear stats you get. And obviously, as you learn or as you play more, you'll know when and what to customize. But anyway, so what I want to start with here, these are actually Slayers, these are skill and artifacts that were created by Hypothermia. This is Discord name. And while a lot of this is translated from Korean and it is somewhat changed since these have been released, these will get you a basic understanding of the different variants of the skills for each class. And scrolling through these, what I'm going to say is that as you get towards the end of each document, no matter it for each class, and I'm going to put these in the description, but as you get towards the end of the document, you start getting towards the higher level skills. And some of these have changed in location in recent patches, but generally speaking, the end of the document are like your 39 and your 40 skills, right? So one thing I want to inform you of, there are missing skill variants. The white skill variants for these are missing. What they have done is they've changed the white skill variant. Like in this document, it's a green, but in the closed beta, these were actually white. So I don't know. I don't think that they're going to have the colors correspond anymore. What we had was basically white, green, blue, and purple. And I believe this is going to be like how it is on release. Please correct me if I am wrong in the comments, but in both betas we've had in North America, it has been white, green, blue, purple. There has not been a legendary. And that brings us to my next point. Creating a build based upon your strongest damage dealing skill for each class is going to be key and essential. Like I just scrolled down to Elementalist, right? And let's say we're looking at creating a flame step build, or we're looking at creating a Phoenix build, right? Which Phoenix is an amazing skill for PvP. If I was to just spec into the uncommon artifact for this build and then utilize my skill points in other areas, I would miss out on insane damage boost, that I get from rocking the epic version of Phoenix Ground. And this is because this epic skill is going to generate an entire new area of damage. And that is typically how it goes for each class. The epic skill variant of your 39 and your 40 skills are typically going to completely change the way that you play your character. So I encourage you, when you get into this game, and I can't really create skill builds because we don't have a calculator for this. And this is why I'm explaining this to you, or I would be providing you at least a basic build. But because I can't, I'm just explaining to you how you're going to want to create and choose your build once Elyon launches. And like I said, from all the testing I've done, it is going to be guaranteed. Like, let's say you have 100 skill points, you're gonna want to spend that 50 or 60 artifact power or skill points on that epic grade skill, because for every class it is absolutely phenomenal. I cannot stress that enough. But I encourage each of you to go through your respective classes document, like I said, provided by Hypothermia, and learn the different variations of your skills. And like I said, your 39 and your 40 skills towards the end are going to be what you're basing your build upon. If it doesn't have an epic in here, if it doesn't have an actual epic, I think they call them grade heroics, they're actually epic in the NA, then it's not going to be a main skill for your class. Okay. So that being said, outside of these skill documents, which will be in the description, next we're going to get into runes and Mana Awakening, which it's called a Sephiroth calculator here, but in the actual NA version they called it Mana Awakening. And so runes are dependent upon your armor, for those of you that are on the newer side, and the sockets on your armor can be changed by re-rolling at an NPC at a foothold. So depending upon what is your main rune stat, you're going to want to try and get as many of those rune pieces, level 3, tier 3 runes, as early as possible. They will give you a secondary weapon through the quest line that will allow you to slot multiple of, well, you can actually slot any color rune, but typically what you're going to want to do is, if you don't have enough slots for your main colored rune, you're going to want to stick them in your secondary. But your goal is to get to around 21 to 33, depending upon how invested you want to be. I have set these archetypes up on 33, 12, and 12, which would be somewhat ideal, but it is going to be difficult until you learn how to truly min-max your armor. So even though I'm giving you the 33, 12, and 12, when you start the game, you're most likely going to be somewhere near 21, 12, and 12, because it's a lot easier to get to 21 rune points with tier 3 runes than it is to get to 33 and still be able to min-max your other runes. But like I said, I'm giving you an archetype. So this current archetype that we're looking at, this is more of a glass cannon DPS. This could be used for a class like a Slayer. And keep in mind, just because I'm giving you these runes doesn't mean that there aren't Slayers running other runes. I've seen Slayers rocking full yellow because the yellow tree actually gives 9 points in all the other trees once you get to 33, which would be here. It says 12. I'm pretty sure it's 9 in NA. Anyway, so under the Destiny tree, once you hit the 33, you actually get extra points in all the other trees. So a lot of people will try and go for that. I don't recommend it for PvPers. If you're a PvEer, you could get away with that very easily. But seeing as how Elyon is a balanced game between PvE and PvP, unless you're a Korean player or a very experienced player, you're going to be behind if you go full Destiny. So what I recommend is actually specking into your main stat first and then going into the other trees. And like I said, you're playing for the long term, long game, yeah, sure. That 33, those extra points, it will definitely help. But I'm just setting you up with a basic archetype right now. And like I said, this one is for glass cannon. Now going through the runes, this awakening, it decreases the cooldowns of all skills and it increases artifact power, which means that you can respectively have more skills in your skill attribute pages because you're decreasing the artifact power required for each skill. And then both the positive and negative effects are increased. So this is just strengthening the first line for this awakening path. And like I said, most people are going to go for the damage output on this one, but trust me when I say decreasing the cooldown of all skills for a glass cannon is essential, because if you're all damage and you don't have much sustain, you need to get those skills out as quickly as possible, because your skills are going to be both your mobility, your protection, and your damage. So you need your skills. Trust. And then the 12th line, upon entering combat, is granting you immunity to CC basically. And like I said, as a glass cannon, you cannot be CC'd. If you get CC as a glass cannon, you're missing DPS. It's a bad time. And this is why I'm going to show you the Mana Awakening for this build a little bit, which is projected around evasion and avoiding CC. And again, the 33 skill is your shock release grants 1 charge. So this is getting you an extra dodge or an extra CC immunity. So for classes like Slayer and Assassin, this 33 into Awakening is actually huge. Having the ability to get out of 2 CCs is huge, especially for players that are easily baited by opponent CCs, because Warlords and Elementalists can bait CCs very easily, and once they see that your CC is gone, they will lock you down and CC you to death. So this is going to be essential, like I said, for Slayers and Warlords. Slayers and Assassins. I do know some Warlords that have went full purple, but they were very ahead of the curve. Don't think this would be ideal for a Warlord, though it could work. But for your secondary defense, you gotta have something in defense if you're going full, like I said, full damage, full glass cannon, because this is going to keep you alive just a little bit longer for you to get your burst off, right? And well, again, this is the anti-CC build. So this first line is decreasing damage when you get CC'd, because like I said, most enemies or most opponents in PvP, they're going to apply their biggest burst when they get their CC off. I'm not going to use my burst skills if I don't land a CC. So this is key for glass cannon. And then this one is dependent upon evasion, and each evasion, it guarantees you a shield. So for players that are skilled and that can evade skills pretty well, that this is just going to allow you more sustain. And each time you take damage, you are restoring HP. I mean, that's self-explanatory. So for your glass cannon build, obviously you're going to be dependent upon CC to get your burst off, and this is why I have control as a piece of this build. So every stun you inflict critical hit chance, and then this one is just increasing that buff, right? And this 12th line is absolutely amazing. Basically, you're dropping a bomb upon the enemy that inflicts another CC, an airborne CC, this is RNG based. It's dependent upon your damage, but for classes that are heavy damage based and that can get a lot of multi hits off, like Assassin and Slayer, like I said, that extra CC on top of your CC, it's just going to allow you more burst. And when it does proc, or if it does proc at the right time, you can completely just destroy an opponent. So like I said, going into these trees, it makes it a very good anti CC and burst glass cannon build. And because you are glass cannon, I have went into the dexterity tree to allow you more evasion. I'm not gonna go over each Sephiroth just for the link to this video. Like I said, I will link these in the description. I've done a good amount of explaining. What I'm going to do though is explain that for each Sephiroth you hit on the Tree of Life, or Mana Awakening, whatever you want to call it. This is actually a Tree of Life. It's called a Mana Awakening in A, but for each one of these Sephiroths that you hit, essentially what is happening is you are gaining a stat bonus, a passive stat bonus, and then you're also gaining actives. And like I said, for the glass cannons, for the slayers, for the assassins, I chose this side of the tree because your evasion is so key and critical, and using your evasion, this Sephiroth, this tree is going to allow you to use your evasion, not just as a dodge, but as another CC immunity. And you also gain damage for getting out of CC. Like I said, this ultimate allows you to use your shift in all situations. Very good and paired with the Awakening tree. Now this rune setup, this next rune setup, this is more so for a defensive type character. This could be used for more like Warlord, where you're going to be going defense main, and then Awakening and Control are like your secondary, right? All damage taken to the shield is decreased by 10%, and you're gaining a shield upon block. So for a Warlord, you can block all day. You can slot multiple blocks if you want to. So you're basically getting a guaranteed shield that decreases your damage. And then each time you damage an enemy, which basically you don't want to go for the other ones on like a Warlord per se, because the second you drop your shield, you're going to attack, and which means you're going to gain HP. And while you're in your shield, you're already taking reduced damage, so you don't really need these other lines. But like I said, upon taking any damage, you acquire a stack buff that decreases incoming damage. So this whole tree setup is just based upon sustain. And keep in mind, a sustained build like this is going to be countered by a glass cannon build, and this is why I put these next to each other. Like I said, defense is countered by glass cannon damage, and vice versa. It's a skill matchup, and it can go either way depending upon how good each of the respective players are. But because I'm going into the defense tree, I need a bit of extra damage, and I need my CC. So that's why I'm going into Awakening, and that is why I'm increasing the positive effect. The negative effect is minuscule to a class that can block like Warlord. This effect is minuscule to a class like, to a good Ellie who can use his defensive skills at the right moments. Like this build could also be rocked on an Ellie because of their immense amount of mobility and their ability to slot sustain skills, aka like their ice barrier. And then, like I said, the control part of this build, again, I'm rocking that explosive control. It's just so freaking good. It's so hard to make a build without this control, at least in 12 points. And then upon inflicting knockdown and airborne. Now, between knockdown and airborne and stun, it's totally personal preference. But because I have designed this one more focused towards like Warlords, Warlords have more knockdown and airborne skills than they do stuns, though that is also build specific. So that's why I say it's personal preference, because you can still slot multiple stuns out of Warlord. So both of those first lines are pretty good for this setup. And then for the Sephiroth, it's full blue with the Mana Awakening at the top, basically reducing the cooldown of skills, because your main damage is going to come from your skills. It's not going to be insane burst, but you're going to have an immense amount of resources with this tree. Your resource management is going to be immaculate, and you are going to always have your skills off cooldown, which it goes well and paired with your sustain runes. And that is the explanation behind these two paired. Now, this is the last one I'm gonna do. I could create archetypes all day, but I'm just trying to get you guys some basic archetypes that are competitive, that are tested, and that I've seen work. I've seen them, I've either played them or I've seen them played by Koreans, or both. It's kind of actually both, because I've messed with various different types of builds in CVT1 and CVT2. I just pretty much knew what I wanted to do. So for this last rune page setup, this one is geared more towards like a ranged class, like a mystic projectile user, or like an elementalist projectile user. And I say that because I'm still getting the shield, right? Still using the evasion one. But what's different is, because you're going to be standing at a range, your 21 skill that I went for, 21. Your 21 skill is, it's actually decreasing projectile damage, so that classes that do try and sit back and range you, which you're going to always be at a range because you have mobility, they won't do as much damage. So it just provides you more sustain. And like I said, the support, it helps tremendously, but I've seen a lot of mystics go main support, and I don't think going main support for a PvP mystic is the way. It is useful, but I don't think it is the way. And this is why I don't have this as your main stat over defense. You get extra healing upon support, which is great, and you basically, you get these spears that give you an extra shield, which pairs well with your defensive tree. So this is another version of a sustained build, which works well with casters, is what I'm trying to say. But instead of going Awakening, I'm going for Onslaught, because a class like a Mystic isn't really going to be able to get away with the Awakening tree as much. They really need that crit. They really need the base damage because of their lack of overall skill burst damage. Now for an Ellie, you could potentially use some of the other builds, but like more for a Mystic, like I would recommend more so like blue red for sure. And then like I said, support it's always nice to have support on a Mystic, but like I said, guaranteed you're gonna want to be going for like blue and red if you're playing Mystic. Okay. And there's gonna be a lot of controversy on that. I'm just saying that, but like I said, do the testing. Let me know your opinions once you've tested like blue and red versus like full green and blue. And because keep in mind, you're not gonna win many fights if you don't have any damage, especially in 2v2s and 3v3s, and that's my mentality behind it. In a 1v1, you could potentially out sustain someone who can't burst you in one combo. But if you don't have any damage as a Mystic, contrary to popular belief, if you don't have any damage, you're not that useful in a team fight. It's great that you can heal, but if all you're doing is healing and you're not DPSing at all, you don't have any type of crit or any type of like pressure applied, then you're not that great as a Mystic. And now this Sephiroth tree can be like this one specifically is more so geared towards Ellie. You can also use the first Sephiroth tree that I mentioned, which is more so for evasion. So if you're more so worried about staying alive, you can go for the evasion and mana resource Sephiroth tree that I linked, or Mana Awakening tree that I linked. And for Ellies that you just want that burst with it pairs really well with like I said, the blue sustain. Um, this orange tree, the far left one, is more so focused upon projectiles and damage. And your projectiles are going to get an insane damage boost from going this route. And that is really all that needs to be said about this Sephiroth tree. I've already talked to you about this one. And like I said, guys, take everything that I said here with a grain of salt. Don't get too salty. There's already a lot of salt in the Elyon community. What I'm trying to do here is give you basic archetypes that are competitive so that you can compete at a good level. And like I said, once you know better, then do better. These builds are for people that have been asking me for a setup that is good. These are good. But once you are better, do better. Thank you guys for watching. Peace and love, everyone.